Well, the Office of Attorney General has historically and traditionally been funded, at least in part, from the general fund. We try and do everything we can to get settlement money from different pots if we can, and that money offsets what the general fund would give us. All we're asking for is a minimum commitment of really just 25% of our overall budget, so that if for some reason we don't get a level of funding from other sources, that we can count on that. And that money was not provided in the last session. There was I don't want to second guess the legislature, but I will say this about, my opponents talked an awful lot about law enforcement, but he was actually in the legislature at that time, voted for that bill that eliminated the funding for this very office. And you can say, well, there were a lot of other things in it, whatever, but my point there would be, if he cared that much about funding the office that he wants now, he would have said something about it. He would have made a issue of it, or pointed out the significance of that, which, so far as I can tell, he never bothered to mention at the time, when he could have.
Yeah.
Well, if I may offer a clarification, right now the Attorney General's office is receiving $0 from the general fund. And that's because it has sources of other revenue. The mortgage lending fraud case, I believe, has put up to $17 million, could be as much as $21 million in the coffers of the AG's office. And when we were debating the Attorney General's funds in this last legislative session, one point of concern for what is a self-described fiscally conservative legislature was the fact that the AG's office to date has wasted a tremendous amount of taxpayer dollars on what is seen by many as political witch hunts that serve nobody's interest other than the Attorney General's own. So the decision was made not to send good money after bad, to not fund the Attorney General's office out of the general fund, but rather let the Attorney General's office operate on the resources that were already located there. Now, you'll remember back to 2010, Governor Riley was transitioning out, and under the cover of darkness slipped the AG's office $9 million out of BP settlement funds, which for all intents and purposes was to pursue this wasteful war on bingo. Now, the legislature, in one of its few acts of wisdom, found that out and sent it back to where it belonged. So there's a history of the Attorney General squirreling away money for his own political witch hunts, and that history is well known by this legislature. So the legislature decided not to send more money to that office. You might say that the legislature does not like to fund wasteful agencies, and this is just one more agency that it saw appropriate to defund. Now, all of that's to say that the Attorney General's office is not in the red. There is plenty of money to operate that office for the purpose that office should be operated. When we cut out a lot of the waste, when we cut out a lot of the politics, what you'll see that there are revenues there to prosecute violent crime. There are revenues there to support local law enforcement at every level to help root up these out-of-state drug rings. There is revenue there to help support victims and their families when they have to go before the parole board and face a family member's murderer or rapist who's trying to cut a sentence short. So there are resources there. It's not a matter of whether those resources exist. It's whether those resources can be used to their highest and best use in a fiscally conservative manner. And as a steward of the taxpayer dime, that's something I intend to do.